I received an email this morning from a shoe company in Europe. They said they were very impressed with my videos, especially all of my product reviews. They liked how I did them, they said. They wanted to know if they could send me a pair of shoes that I could review on my channel. This was a nice email to get. Unfortunately, the product reviews that they mentioned don't exist. I've never made any product reviews, so I'm not sure what they're talking about. What it is mostly is an example of bad online marketing. They either made a mistake and sent it to the wrong person, or they're just hoping that I'll say yes and somehow get me to pay for a pair of shoes. Or it could be a scam. Now, I don't think it had anything to do with a scam. I'm pretty sure it was just a silly mistake. But it reminded me that there are a lot of scams going on in Malaysia right now, online that is. And that a lot of local people you read about in the press almost every day who have lost hundreds of thousands of ringgit to some kind of online scammer. Now, they never quite outline what the scams are, so I'm kind of in the dark about what the pretext is. But there are several kinds of scams that you see on the street that affect mostly tourists that I'm going to talk about now. The first one I called the Lucky Man scam. I actually looked at this up before I started this video, and there is a listing online of what this is, and it's actually called the Lucky Man scam. So I named it appropriately without even knowing it. But it will happen to tourists or people that look like tourists in high trafficked areas, and someone will come up and stop and look at you and say, "Oh, you are a lucky man," or "Oh, you are very lucky." Now, the pretext, of course, is to get you to ask how they know that. And they'll go try to engage in conversation and explain through various supernatural abilities how they know that you're lucky. But these guys are usually well dressed. They're well spoken. They'll speak perfect English. At least they did when they contacted me. There's usually two of them that work together. And it's happened to me twice, once this year on this current trip and once last year. The first time I sort of got into conversation because it was kind of an interesting idea that this guy could tell just by looking at me or by some supernatural ability that I was very lucky. And eventually, I've been around Asia long enough to realize that this was not something that we were going to part without him asking for some kind of money. The second time was just a few weeks ago on this trip. I was trying to cross the street, and this guy came up right next to me and says, "Oh, you are a lucky man." And I looked at him and I said, "I know," and kept on walking. Once you know what's going on, it's no longer fun. This is the famous Wanzhou restaurant that almost every YouTuber that comes to KL goes to try out the nasi lemak, as if that's the only place they can get it. If you're interested and you do come to KL, you'll find that nasi lemak, you'd have to stay indoors to avoid it. It's everywhere. It's on every street corner in the morning, and it's cheap. If you go to a restaurant and get nasi lemak, you're going to invariably end up spending way too much money for it. Now, this second scam, I'm sure it has a name, but I couldn't find it when I looked it up online. And it involves someone, as you're walking by, will ask if you speak English. If you say yes, he'll announce that he's from India or Sri Lanka or Nepal, some South Asian country. And then he'll open his shirt and show you a big bloody bandage in the middle of his stomach. And he'll have a piece of paper in his hand, and he'll say that he needs drugs, some kind of painkiller or antibiotic, some kind of drug to do with the wound he has in his stomach. And obviously, he needs money to get this kind of drug. This has also happened to me twice. Once last year and once on this trip. The first time I took his paper and looked at it, and I started to read a list of drugs, and then I suddenly realized, of course, that I wasn't a pharmacist, so I gave him back the paper and told him to go see his embassy. Now, if that was the only time this happened, I wouldn't know it's a scam. But it happened again this year. Wasn't the same guy, but it was the exact same scenario. South Asian, do you speak English, paper in hand, big bloody wound on the belly. And as soon as he opened his shirt, I just walked away. So when you see something like that, the wound is quite, well, it looks quite formidable. It's not something that if a normal person showed you something like that, that you would just dismiss. But you have to realize it's not real. It's a scam. I'm climbing up to the Bensound Saloma. There's two ways to get to the top from Kampung Baru. One is by lift. The other is by either 8 or 15 flights of stairs. I'm not really sure how many. I'll let you know when I get to the top. This is probably the most interesting photo spot in Kuala Lumpur at night, because you have the towers on one side of the street, you have Bensound Saloma on the other side, and in between you've got about 500,000 people trying to get pictures of themselves standing in front of both of them. It's also busy during the day, but not so much. Often on a national holiday, the towers will be lit in the colors of the Malaysian flag, which are red, yellow, blue, and white. That's usually on like National Day or special birthdays like for the king or something like that. So if you come to Kuala Lumpur, you have to make sure to come to this area in the evening when it's dark. Now, I'm sure there are other scams that a tourist would run into here in KL. Those are just two of the ones that I've experienced myself so far this year. But if you have other ones, please leave them in the comments below. And maybe in a future video I can make this compilation a little bit more complete. Anyway, I'm heading back to the apartment. About a 10-minute walk. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.